What if I told you that both capitalists and socialists are fighting a war against an enemy that doesn't exist? That the great ideological divide of our time is actually a carefully constructed illusion, designed to keep us trapped in false dichotomies? Look at this. Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world, built his empire using distribution systems that would be envied by any Soviet central planner. Meanwhile, communist China produces more billionaires per year than any traditional capitalist economy. Paradoxical? Not really. If you value content that challenges you to think beyond the obvious, go ahead and subscribe and hit that notification bell. Let's take this journey together to deconstruct the ready-made truths they sell us every day. The question is, are we asking the right questions? When we talk about capitalism versus socialism, are we really talking about economic systems, or about something much deeper and more dangerous? Are we talking about how we organize society, or how we're organized by it? Today, we're going to dive deep into this question, not to pick sides, but to understand why this choice might be the most sophisticated trap ever created by modern thought. Let's start with some facts that will mess up everything you think you know about this discussion. First example, Sweden, always cited as a socialist model, has fewer state-owned companies than France. Even more, it has one of the freest markets in the world according to the Heritage Foundation. Swedish socialism is actually capitalism with redistribution. Paradox number 1. Second example, Singapore, this jewel of Asian capitalism, has 90% of its population living in public housing. The government directly controls 22% of GDP. If this were in Latin America, it would be called communism. Paradox number 2. Third example, the United States, bastion of the free market, spends more on public health care per capita than most countries with universal health care systems. The result, the most expensive and least efficient system in the developed world. Paradox number 3. Fourth example, South Korea, which everyone celebrates as a capitalist miracle, was built through more rigid central planning than many socialist countries. The government decided which companies could exist, which products could be made, who could import what. Park Chung-hee was more dirigious than many communist leaders. Fifth example, Cuba, symbol of Caribbean socialism, has one of the highest entrepreneurship rates in Latin America. Small private businesses proliferate on every corner of Havana. Meanwhile, Venezuela, which declares itself socialist, has an economy more dependent on international commodity markets than any capitalist country in the region. Starting to see the pattern? We're not talking about pure systems. We're talking about narratives that don't correspond to reality. To understand this confusion, we need to meet Karl Polanyi, a Hungarian thinker that most people have never heard of, but who unraveled the illusion behind this false dichotomy. Polanyi was born in 1886 into a middle-class Jewish family in Vienna. He lived through 2 world wars, the rise of fascism, the Russian Revolution, and the 1929 crash. In other words, he witnessed the modern world being born and almost dying several times. This traumatic experience led him to a revolutionary conclusion. Neither capitalism nor socialism are natural systems. They are recent, artificial, and profoundly unstable social constructions. In 1944, Polanyi published The Great Transformation, a book that should be required reading for anyone who wants to understand the modern world. His central thesis is devastating. What we call the market economy has never existed in pure form in human history. It's a dangerous utopia, a fiction that tries to impose itself by force on real societies. For Polanyi, the self-regulating market is like trying to create a perpetual motion machine, theoretically elegant, practically impossible. Why? Because it tries to transform 3 things that were never commodities into commodities: labor, land, and money. In other words, it tries to commodify humanity itself, nature, and the means of exchange. The result, society reacts. Always. Polanyi calls this the double movement. Every attempt to impose a total market generates an equivalent social reaction. Unions, labor laws, environmental regulation, currency controls. All of this isn't market distortion, it's society's self-defense reaction. And here's the crucial point. Socialism, for Polanyi, is not the solution. It's just the extreme reaction to market totalitarianism, a reaction that can be as destructive as the original problem. Let's deepen this analysis with what we know today about human behavior and social organization. Neuroscience confirms something Polanyi intuited. Our brains aren't programmed to handle abstract large-scale exchange systems. We're programmed for reciprocity, for small groups, for face-to-face relationships. What we call economic rationality is actually a small part of our cognition. which only works well in very specific contexts. Dan Ariely's studies show that our economic behavior is systematically irrational, but only seems irrational within the logic of Homo economicus. In reality, we follow much more complex patterns of reciprocity, status, and group identity. This explains why both pure capitalism and socialism fail in practice. Both assume that humans are optimization machines, whether for profit or collective welfare. But we're not. We're social primates trying to live in complex civilizations. Let's look at contemporary examples. The digital economy has created something that doesn't fit into either traditional category. What is Google? A capitalist company that offers free services financed by advertising. What is Wikipedia? A collective project that works better than any private encyclopedia, but without central planning. What are cryptocurrencies? Decentralized currencies that reproduce all the pathologies of financial capitalism, but without any of the social protections that the state offers. What are big tech companies? Private companies that exercise regulatory power over billions of people, without democratic accountability. In China, the system they call market socialism is, in practice, state capitalism with Chinese characteristics. The government controls strategic sectors, but allows and encourages competition in other sectors. Is it capitalism or socialism? The question doesn't make sense. In Silicon Valley, cradle of digital capitalism, companies function internally, like socialist communes. Free food, free transportation, collective decisions, abolition of traditional hierarchy, but externally. They're capital concentration machines more efficient than any traditional corporation. The point is, if reality doesn't fit the categories, maybe the problem is with the categories. We've reached a crucial point in our analysis. If anything here has made you think differently so far, hit that like button and share this with someone who's not afraid to reflect. Because what comes next is going to be even more uncomfortable. We're going to talk about how this false dichotomy between capitalism and socialism isn't just an intellectual error. It's a political trap that serves very specific interests. Think about it. Who benefits when public debate is limited to more market or less market? Who wins when the only choice is between individual freedom and social equality? Who profits when we divide ourselves between capitalists and socialists? The answer will surprise you, and it will explain why this discussion has dominated political debate for over 150 years without ever getting anywhere. The truth is that the capitalism versus socialism dichotomy is the most sophisticated control tool ever created by modern power, and I'm going to show you how this works in practice. First mechanism, capturing revolt. Every domination system needs a safety valve. Socialism functions as the safe channel to funnel dissatisfaction with capitalism. Instead of questioning the industrial production system, bureaucratization of life, environmental destruction, work alienation, issues that affect both capitalism and socialism, the debate focuses on who should control the means of production. Second mechanism, false opposition. Observe, both capitalism and socialism are industrial, urban, centralized systems that treat nature as a resource and humans as production factors. Both promote infinite economic growth, technical efficiency, bureaucratic rationalization. The difference is only administrative, private company, or state-owned. Third mechanism, existential blackmail. If you criticize capitalism, you're a communist. If you criticize socialism, you're a fascist. This blackmail prevents any genuinely alternative thinking. Any proposal that doesn't fit into the two categories is automatically delegitimized. Let's look at historical examples. Nazi Germany was neither capitalist nor socialist in the pure sense. It was a new system that combined private property with central planning, business initiative with state control, market with autarky. But both capitalists and socialists pretend that Nazism was the other side, when in fact, it was a diabolical synthesis of both. The Soviet Union didn't eliminate work alienation. It just changed the boss. The worker remained a screw in the machine, only now the machine belonged to the state. Communist bureaucracy reproduced all the pathologies of capitalist bureaucracy, sometimes in even more extreme ways. And today we see communist China producing more billionaires than the United States. We see Nordic countries combining free markets with welfare states. We see American corporations adopting more rigid, central planning than many socialist countries. What does this tell us? That the dichotomy is false, that the real conflict isn't between capitalism and socialism, but between different ways of organizing power, between centralization and decentralization, between bureaucracy and autonomy, between efficiency and humanity. But here's the most dangerous point. while we fight over more market versus less market. The planet is dying, while we discuss whether property should be private or state-owned. Democracy is being destroyed, while we divide ourselves between economic left and right. Real power is concentrated in a technical elite that doesn't care about either ideology. So, what do we do? How do we escape this mental trap that keeps us imprisoned in a 19th century debate? First step, stop identifying as capitalist or socialist. These identities are intellectual prisons. Be pragmatic. Evaluate each policy, each institution, each proposal by its concrete results, not by its ideological label. Second step, learn to ask different questions. Instead of "is this capitalist or socialist?" ask, "does this increase or decrease people's autonomy? Does this concentrate or decentralize power? Does this strengthen or weaken local democracy?" Third step, study examples that don't fit. The dichotomy, cooperatives, social enterprises, circular economy, participatory democracy, peer-to-peer technologies. There's a world of experiences that work outside the capitalism versus socialism logic. Fourth step, develop systems thinking. Understand that the economy isn't separate from ecology, politics, culture. Real solutions need to be holistic, not reductionist. Fifth step, practice real economy in your life. Join responsible consumption groups, support local businesses, experiment with community currencies, form mutual aid networks. The economy isn't just macroeconomics, it's also the microeconomics of daily life. Sixth step, question growth. Both capitalism and socialism are addicted to infinite economic growth. On a finite planet, this is impossible. Learn about degrowth, steady-state economics, well-being economics. Seventh step, recover sense of scale. Many problems we try to solve with national or global policies are better solved locally. Many solutions that work locally don't apply globally. Learn to distinguish. Eighth step, develop intellectual resistance. Don't accept that your only options are the ones they offer you. Whenever someone presents you with a binary choice, be suspicious. Look for the third option, the fourth, the fifth. But individual changes aren't enough. We need systemic changes that go beyond the capitalism versus socialism dichotomy. First change, real economic democracy. It's not enough to democratize the state. We need to democratize the economy. This means cooperatives, participatory management, workers' collective ownership, universal basic income, reduced working hours. Second change, radical decentralization. Both capitalism and socialism tend toward power concentration. We need systems that distribute power, distributed energy, local production, regional currencies, participatory decisions. Third change, circular economy. The linear model of extract, produce, dispose is unsustainable whether capitalist or socialist. We need regenerative systems that work with natural cycles, not against them. Fourth change, emancipatory technology. Technology isn't neutral. It can concentrate or distribute power. We need technologies that increase people's autonomy, not dependence on corporations or states. Fifth change, education for autonomy. Our educational system was designed to produce obedient workers, whether for private companies or state ones. We need education that develops critical thinking, creativity, capacity for cooperation. Sixth change, metrics beyond GDP. Both capitalism and socialism measure success by production growth. We need metrics that include well-being, sustainability, quality of life, social health. These changes aren't utopian. They're already happening in different parts of the world. The problem is that we can't see them because we're trapped in categories from the past. Block 9, philosophical climax plus final 10 minutes. We've reached the end of this journey. But in reality, we've reached the beginning, because intellectual liberation is just the first step. The real challenge is building concrete alternatives. The question I leave you with is this: which of your political certainties are you willing to question? Which of your ideological identities do you have the courage to abandon? Which of your intellectual securities will you sacrifice for the truth? Because the future won't be either capitalist or socialist. It will be something that doesn't have a name yet, something we're still inventing. And all of us are responsible for this invention. History shows us that moments of greatest transformation are also moments of greatest confusion. We're living through one of those moments. Capitalism and socialism are 19th century categories trying to explain 21st century realities. It doesn't work. What works is intellectual courage. It's the ability to think outside the box. It's the humility to recognize that we don't know all the answers. It's the wisdom to ask the right questions. Which idea are you willing to question this week? Leave it in the comments. And if this video awakens something in you, share it with someone who also needs to hear this. This is how we resist together thinking. Because at the end of the day, the real revolution isn't economic, it's mental. It's the revolution of those who refuse to accept false choices and have the courage to imagine real alternatives.